Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Jess Sanger, and I'm a Policy Research Associate at Plug in America. So for the first section of the webinar, I'm going to be talking about a toolkit that we developed in order to amplify solutions for electric vehicle charging access at multifamily housing. We published this toolkit in May of this year, but we're going to take a closer look today at the development of this resource and hear from some great panelists who are currently working on EV and charging access projects. So some background, Plug in America is a national nonprofit that has been working for over 15 years to accelerate EV adoption through education, including ride and drive events and dealer trainings, policy advocacy on the federal and state levels, and consumer research, including our annual EV driver survey. So just introducing the challenge here. For EV drivers who can charge at home, fueling your car for daily driving couldn't possibly be any easier. They can plug in at any time and wake up to a full charge every morning. But not all EV drivers can charge at home. Some people don't have a private parking space, and managers of rental units, condos, and homeowners associations, which we generally call multifamily housing, can sometimes be unwilling to install chargers or will make drivers pay for their own charger installation. Relying on public charging can lead to increased spending on fuel because their rate is likely higher than the market rate for electricity. Public charging might not be even available or convenient in all areas. So with all that said, the affordability, convenience, and reliability of EV charging for those living in multifamily housing needs some improvement. So Plug in America set out to research this challenge and find some solutions to improve charging access. First, the team compiled a huge list of any and all solutions that we heard about. These solutions are spread out across the US and came from companies, utilities, nonprofits, and state governments, to name a few. Some of our favorites included a vertical parking and charging carousel in Pittsburgh, a city in Florida providing free public charging, and a vehicle-to-grid charging program in multiple cities. For our toolkit, we picked 20 programs that have a unique approach, but are potentially scalable to other locations. So once we had narrowed down to our 20 case studies, I wanted to have a way to categorize them at a glance that could be useful for decision makers looking to implement their own solutions. So I came up with 4 main categories. The technology solutions have the largest number of case studies, and these are generally from companies selling their own charging technologies, from assistance with rewiring to load management. These technologies are innovative and very effective, but they can sometimes incur additional costs. The policy solutions we found were mostly at the state and city level, and they use government funding and resources to provide support directly to property owners and managers looking to install charging. Community solutions came from small and large nonprofits and organizations that tend to focus on supporting EV drivers directly. And utilities across the country offer incentives and assistance with charger installation at multifamily housing. We also categorize the case studies by the problems they address and whether drivers can use public or private charging, as we'll see later. So for each of our 20 case studies, we wrote a description of the challenge facing the EV driver community where the solution is located. Then we summarized the program and made a list of elements for success that could be implemented in other areas. We conducted interviews with representatives from many of the programs we featured, which helps us to get our facts right and added a narrative element to the case studies. We heard so many stories about what worked and what didn't in each program, which greatly informed our own recommendations for future projects. So I chose to highlight these 3 case studies today: the EV car share program from Forth, the state of Vermont's charging incentives, and Peninsula Clean Energy's technical support program, because our panelists today are here to talk about these programs in more depth. It was great to talk with them about these programs, and I hope all of you will find their programs and presentations exciting too. So as another element of our case charging access toolkit, we went into more detail of our 20 case studies in a data matrix. We collected publicly available data and responses from our interviews to answer questions from each project, such as where's the charger located, what type of charger is it, where does the funding come from, how much does it cost EV drivers to charge, did the project include affordable housing units, and what future-proofing strategies does the project use that will keep the chargers viable over time. This matrix is available as a spreadsheet in our toolkit, and viewers can filter the columns to find projects that meet specific criteria. Special thanks to the rest of the toolkit team for working really hard on this. It was definitely the most complex element of the toolkit, but it contains a wealth of information that's publicly available. So this map summarizes the geographical diversity of projects that we highlighted in our toolkit, including the 20 case studies, which are the dots with gray borders, and some additional projects. The solutions were mainly concentrated in urban areas, especially California and the East Coast. And we would love to see more solutions in rural areas, the Great Plains and the Southeast, since multifamily housing exists there too. Non-urban areas provide great opportunities for charging access solutions since they are more car dependent and could use more assistance and funding. And there's an accompanying spreadsheet with more information about each solution featured on the map, and I hope to add new projects as we come across them. So we also analyzed the types of solutions that we found. So on the top right, we analyzed how many of our 20 case studies fit into each solution type, as I described earlier. We chose one main solution type for each case study. Technology solutions dominated the mix, so it'd be great to see more solutions from the other categories in the future. On the bottom left, we tracked if the charging is public, private, or either. Public charging is the most common because in many cases, residential charging stations are also open to the public. Private charging is still important since it provides the most convenient experience for drivers. And we also noted which problems the project are addressing. Access was the most common, followed by equipment and then cost. Solutions that reduce costs for EV drivers are critically important, since cost is a big consideration in the everyday lives of EV drivers and people looking to switch to an EV. And we'd love to see more cost-reducing charging solutions in the future. So at the end of our report, we listed some best practices for decision makers and advocates looking to improve charging access in their community. These recommendations include: consider level 1 charging for residential units, make public charging convenient and accessible, look for charging installations incentives from utilities and local governments, prioritize business models that reduce costs, and implement load management and vehicle-to-grid charging to spread out the EV charging load. And we also included some strategies that made our case study project successful. These include: take advantage of stackable incentives and save money with upfront incentives, involve your local utility early in the planning process, include local property owners and residents to honor their wishes and concerns, consider short-term stopgap solutions like sidewalk mats for charging cables supported by the City of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and prioritize underserved communities and affordable housing locations. So huge thanks to the Plug in America team that helped with the writing, formatting, and promoting this toolkit. And we'll put the link to our landing page in the chat one more time, where you'll find all the resources I talked about today. And please put any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we will answer them during our Q&A portion. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you'll find the toolkit useful. And now let's meet our panelists for today. So first, we have Jennifer Zavon. Jennifer is a program manager at Forth, a nonprofit focused on increasing equitable access to electric transportation. She supports the implementation of car sharing programs that increase access to EVs and charging in underserved communities across the US. Prior to Forth, she managed programs for the City of Cincinnati Office of Environment and Sustainability, including community engagement around EVs and a residential solar co-op program. Jennifer holds a BS in Environment, Economy, Development, and Sustainability from The Ohio State University. And next we have Bronwyn Cook. She's a community planning and policy manager with the state of Vermont, where she leads work at the intersection of climate action, public policy, and sustainable community development. She holds a master's in urban and environmental policy and planning from Tufts University and brings both strategic insight and practical know-how to her work with municipalities, partner state agencies, and private sector stakeholders. She currently oversees more than $15 million in state funding for EV infrastructure across Vermont, helping rural and urban communities alike prepare for a more sustainable electrified future. And when she's not deep in climate policy, you'll likely find her doing something outside or fixing up an old lamp or light fixture. And last but not least, we have Philip Kobernick. Philip is the Associate Director of Energy Programs for Peninsula Clean Energy, a Bay Area-based community choice energy agency. He oversees the EV and building electrification programs portfolios, and has been working in the EV sector since 2012. And without further ado, let's first hear from Jennifer about the car share program.
Thank you, Jess. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see this title slide? Perfect. Um, well, thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Jennifer Zavon. I'm a program manager at Fourth, and I'm excited to talk to you all today about advancing equitable access to EVs and charging through EV car sharing. So, just wanted to do a little bit of background on Fourth before we dive into the car sharing content. So Fourth is a national nonprofit, and our mission is to electrify transportation by bringing people together to create solutions that reduce pollution and barriers to access. So we have a number of programs dedicated to increasing access to electric transportation of different forms, whether that's cars, bikes, school buses, or tractors. We also advocate for policies that make it easier to adopt electric transportation. And we have webinars that we host as well and events, including our upcoming conference next month. So I'll have a bunch of resources and links at the end that I'll share for more information and if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing and ways to get involved. But now to jump into the car sharing portion of the presentation. So what is car sharing? Car sharing is a model of short-term car rental where you can reserve a car by the hour and you don't have to pay for the full cost of car ownership, and in this case, we're providing EVs and charging stations, so you don't have to pay the full cost of owning either of those assets um, through this program. Fourth manages affordable EV car sharing programs across 8 states currently to increase access to clean transportation as well as charging. And the basic model, the way that it works is you'll download an app. In most of our projects, it's the MDO Car Share app. You'll complete an orientation, and then you'll use the app to reserve and access the car. It serves as your key. And then finally, at the end of your trip, you'll of course plug in the vehicle, start charging, and end your trip through the app. Some of the benefits of car sharing include cost savings. Again, you're not paying for all of the costs associated with car ownership. It's all wrapped into an hourly affordable rate. Things like insurance, maintenance, and just the cost of purchasing or leasing a vehicle are are kind of reduced if you're using the program. Um, Environmental sustainability is another benefit, and even more so with using EVs and car sharing. You have the flexibility and convenience to just pick up a car when you need it, return it, and not have to worry about it at other times. And then as car sharing models kind of expand and become more widely adopted, I think they have the potential to reduce the number of cars on the road that are personal cars, reduce some congestion and traffic, and lead to improved land use and urban planning if there are, less parking spaces needed and less personal vehicles. So I have a couple of studies that are linked and statistics on the right here. There was one from 2010 that estimated that approximately 9 to 13 privately owned vehicles could be replaced by one car share vehicle. And then another study from 2020 showing or finding that about 95% of the time, most vehicles are spending parked. So just kind of thinking with car sharing models, how can we reduce the amount of time that these very expensive assets are just kind of sitting there when maybe somebody else could be using them and benefiting from them. I'll touch on our Affordable Mobility Platform project, or AMP. This is our largest car sharing project right now. It's funded primarily by the US Department of Energy, but also working with 40 different partners across 4 regions in the US. Northwest, Southwest, Midwest, and Southeast to launch about 50 vehicles and charging stations to provide car sharing services um, over the over the course of about 41 months, which is actually it was actually extended a bit longer, so it's now about 47 months and going through it's June of next year now. And the broad goals of this project, and this really encompasses for its other car sharing work as well, which all follows a similar model. One is to increase access to clean transportation. So like I said, we're replacing 50 EVs as well as 50 charging stations across the US to expand access to both of these, both transportation and charging. And we're specifically focusing on affordable housing developments, but we do have some other sites that are more community-based sites, like libraries or a hospital or a community center. So there are various types of host sites that we're working with, but really trying to place these technologies into communities that might not be where the early adopters have traditionally been. Um, and like I said, demonstrating a model for affordable housing, car sharing, and charging. So we're placing a charger for each vehicle that's in the car share program, and each charging station has one port that's dedicated to the car share program and used by specifically the car share vehicle. And it also has a separate public port, which has a rate that's set by the host site. Um, and just helps to expand access to charging either at that multifamily development or in that area. And finally, research and knowledge transfer. So through demonstrating this model of car sharing, we are trying to, take away a lot of learnings and best practices and share those out through. We have some resources that I'll share at the end and a bunch of stuff on our website and having conversations whether it's webinars like this or whether it's kind of one-on-one conversations to share some technical assistance about car sharing programs so that it's easier for other folks to kind of adopt similar models or scale this. Here's a map showing all of the cities for our car sharing work through the AMP program. So they are across 8 different states. All the cities are listed on the left and the right, respectively. And we also have a handful of other car sharing programs that aren't specifically marked on this map, but in Oregon and Washington, we have a handful of other locations which follow a similar model but are outside of this specific project. I have a slide here about some considerations for equity and accessibility that we have incorporated into our car share programs. So one is the orientation. It's kind of an educational piece that everyone goes through when they first sign up for the program. We've found from surveying our car share members that a large majority of them are driving an EV for the first time and charging an EV for the first time as well through this program. And so we give them, the information that they need to be successful in that upfront, so that, they're able to kind of smoothly implement or incorporate this into their transportation routine. That's a big piece of it. We also provide complimentary credit, so we try to really reduce the barriers to someone taking their first trip with the service. It does cost $10 the first time that you sign up, but then you essentially get that back in the form of a $20 credit towards your first trip. Um, there's also complimentary EV charging for the car share vehicle included in the program. And so that's another thing that helps cut down on costs for drivers using this program. And we really prioritize setting affordable rates. So most places it's $5 an hour or $50 per day to rent these vehicles. We have some other bullet points here that are essentially about flexibility around payment to try to make that less of a barrier. So accepting prepaid debit cards if someone doesn't have or doesn't want to use a credit card or debit card, um, and charging the payment method at the end of the trip so that a lack of funds doesn't prevent someone from taking a trip immediately. And then we try to take a member first approach in our customer support, and have we have a 24/7 call center so that folks can reach out and get assistance if they have any issues on their trip, where someone will, speak with you, try to understand your situation, and give that one-to-one assistance. We do have that available as well as the app in English and Spanish. And then another big piece of it is working with local partners at every host site to figure out how to best connect with the people who are living there, and promote the program, and just also, connecting with the members themselves and making sure that the program is doing the best that we can to serve them. Um, I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just briefly touch on the research aspect of this. We partnered with Portland State University to conduct a transportation needs assessment in the different locations where we're doing car sharing work. And we worked with them on a survey as well to collect data from people that are living in the neighborhoods where we're implementing car sharing. Um, and I have a slide on a little bit of feedback that we've gotten from some other surveys that we've shared with CarShare members. So I'm not gonna read all of this, but again, it's just showing majority of folks have their first time driving an EV through this program. Um, it seems, that people have increased interest in buying an EV, and we've even had like a couple of folks anecdotally share with us that they purchased an EV after using this program, or became a lot more interested in it. Um, and a little bit of information on just using the charging associated with the program, that was fairly easy to do. Um, and then also for the sake of time, I won't get into all of the challenges and learnings, but I will say that across the areas of vehicles, host sites, car share members, and project management, we have a ton of challenges and learnings from our several years of doing this work. And I think kind of a common thread across a lot of these challenges and lessons has been the partnerships that we've had with a really diverse array of partners from like utilities, municipalities, um, different affordable housing providers, um, just across the board, collaborating on kind of solving for different issues and making the program stronger. And fourth is always open to sharing things that we've learned through this work with other people. So whether that's a conversation or some of the resources that I'll share on the next slide, um, we're happy to help in whatever way we can if folks are interested in learning more about these types of projects, and if it's something um, that you also might be able to implement in your community. So with that said, here are a few resources. There are a couple of, there's a paper and a report that are from a couple of our different car sharing programs and kind of summarize our program design and things that we've learned. So if you're looking for more detail on challenges and learnings from those, I'd recommend taking a look there. We also have a kind of user or member facing site they can access at fourthmobility.org/go-forth. So that's kind of for more information about how the car share programs work, and how you can sign up for them and get involved. And Fourth's website also has a free email newsletter, webinars, and a bunch of other reports on the other work that we're involved with. And then finally, I'll just do a quick plug for the fourth Roadmap Conference that is coming up next month in Detroit from October 14th through 16th. It's a really great opportunity to network with leaders across the transportation electrification space, from utilities, community-based organizations, and governments, and really just everyone across the board. So feel free to check out roadmapforth.org for more information on that. Um, so thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to answering some questions later.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Yeah, and a quick note about the fourth Roadmap Conference. Our own Ingrid Malmgren from Polygon America is going to be sitting in on a panel at the conference that's specifically about multifamily housing charging and a lot of the issues that we've talked about today, and we'll be presenting our toolkit there. So that'll be an exciting event. Great. And then while Bronwyn gets set up, we have a quick poll just for the audience, and panelists feel free to answer as well. Oh, I guess you can't, but I'm sorry. But it's basically, what do you think is the biggest challenge for charging at multifamily housing? Is it funding or upfront investments, equipment or technology availability, lack of education for decision makers, permitting policies and building code requirements, or something else? So we'll give people a few seconds to answer that. And Bronwyn, feel free to start sharing your screen as we do that. Okay, let's see the results. So, okay, funding or upfront investments is the most popular answer. And next popular answer is permitting policies and building code requirements. Lack of education is a big factor as well, but equipment and technology availability is not a super big challenge for people. So thanks for voting. And now I will pass it over to Bronwyn.
Thanks, Jess. And thanks for including me in the webinar. I'm going to give like the fastest overview possible of our Charge Vermont program that we're running right now, and a little bit about how we got to be there. Just a couple of things that might be helpful to folks who are thinking about supporting multi-unit charging through investments, things that you aren't going to get from our website, hopefully. And also, I'm going to breeze through this because I'm really excited to hear more about Philip's programs. And I also think these forums are really great when we have plenty of time for questions, all of the things that people are curious about that I did not hit on. So I'm Bronwyn Cook. As just mentioned, I'm a community planning and policy manager for a little division called Community Planning and Revitalization, which is in the Department of Housing and Community Development. Our team focuses mostly on land use issues. We help communities with zoning reform, bylaw updates. And so we're kind of a bit of an unlikely suspect for running, a electric vehicle charging program. But we got involved in EV charging early on because we recognized that there were some zoning gaps that needed to be addressed in terms of defining what EVs and EV charging are, and making sure that communities have regulations that are permissive of allowing those things to happen. And then when the Volkswagen settlement funds came along, we got involved in helping to ensure that those funds were being invested in a way that aligned with our land use planning goals and with our local economic development goals. And so that's just to say that, since then, we've sort of engaged with all of the usual partners in this, our transportation agency, Department of Public Service, who regulates or works with utilities, our weights and measures. For those of you who may be new to this, don't forget your weights and measures departments. They are the ones who are regulating essentially commercial payment transactions and anything that has to do with payment for things that are weighed and measured, like electricity. So a little tip there. But that's kind of the backstory about how we got involved in this work. The other thing that our division does a lot of is working on barriers to housing development, making our zoning regulations more permissive for infill development, sort of smart growth style development, housing that is multi-unit, multi-family. We call it missing middle housing. And in the intersection of our EVSC work and our housing work, we were realizing that access to EV charging was particularly challenging for multi-unit properties. Vermont's a very rural state. I don't think anybody thinks of us as having, tons of multi-unit housing, but we do. We have a lot of multi-unit housing. We have folks who live in that multi-unit housing and would otherwise have a hard time accessing home charging. So with that in mind, we started a pilot program back in 2021, 2022. It's a small program to start, $1 million. It was we ran it as a competitive reimbursement grant program. Our goal was, increase access to EV charging for some residents, although we knew we weren't going to make a huge dent with, only $1 million. But the bigger goal was to really test and ID the gaps in the EV charging solutions that are out there and available for multi-unit properties, trying to find the things that work both for the property owners, but also for residents. The program was available to we call them larger, again, it's all relative, but in Vermont, our 10 plus affordable multi-housing was our initial target. And again, in hindsight, maybe we could have seen that, of course, this money would all be, obligated and out the door pretty quickly. But honestly, at the time, we weren't quite sure. But sure enough, in the first round of funding that we offered, the program was fully subscribed. And we had 38 properties in 8 different counties across the state. So for those of you who are not familiar with Vermont, we have one place that most folks would consider really urban. So Burlington, along the western part of the state is it's a city, it's an urban area. But the other counties in Vermont are not places we would think of as typically having a lot of multi-unit. But again, there are multi-unit properties in those other counties. And so we were able to get this funding out to some of the places that are not just in our sort of most urban area. Just a nod to the fact that we were building in some program evaluation into this, again, so we could sort of learn and understand what the challenges are, what the gaps are, and kind of build out our programming. As we were doing this evaluation, we interviewed all of the grant recipients. We were looking at and assessing the different project costs. We are getting station utilization data from anybody that did choose networked equipment. We wrote up some nice case studies, and as we were doing all of this work, some of the learnings that we had out of this, we were just kind of starting to get these learnings about just the general learning curve, the business models that are out there, the equipment options, for a lot of, especially our smaller property owners or smaller multi-unit owners, this is all new to them. And so that learning curve can be pretty steep. It's not part of their, normal business operations to, provide vehicle refueling. So it's a pretty significant learning curve for them. Some challenges with, we initially were just having folks get sort of desktop estimates, and that really can miss a lot of things that are going on in the property and then lead to, unexpected costs with having to do a panel upgrade when, that might have not been quoted from the start. The reimbursement model, we got a lot of feedback on that for a lot of our properties, having that upfront capital to do the project and then waiting on the reimbursement and, not feeling a little risky about whether you were going to actually get the reimbursement really kind of turned a lot of folks off to the program. And then the other big learning that we had is just that still the technology and the regulation is not necessarily designed for the multi-unit use case for EV. And so there's still a lot of work there to do. And even since this program, even since we got involved, doing this program. A lot of that is changing and shifting, but just to say that it's, it's still something that's evolving as we go. As we were doing that evaluation and learning from our pilot program, legislature, I guess, caught wind that the program was fully obligated and we actually had more demand than we were able to fund. And so, kind of right on the tail of finishing up some of our contracts for our initial grant funding round, the legislature authorized additional funding to expand the program and look at other charging options that can help meet that need for charging, that gap in charging for residents of multi-unit. So the authorization included workplace charging as well, intended for employees. The idea being that, okay, if you're not going to be able to get charging at your rental, your multi-unit rental, then, maybe you'd be able to access it at your workplace. And then there was also some funding in there for sort of public attractions, public places where, again, just increasing the network so that folks who don't have charging at home have more options about where they can charge. With this sort of expansion of the program, we decided to find a partner to work with. We put out an RFP. We selected Green Mountain Power, which is Vermont's largest utility, to help us administer this program. And I would say we solved a lot of our challenges just with that one choice to partner with our utility. They bring, obviously a deep bench of knowledge around electricity and EV charging. They have contacts with contractors. They have a CRM system that we do not have to help kind of manage flow of applications, et cetera. So working with Green Mountain Power to administer these funds, and they are administering it on behalf of all of the utilities in Vermont. And then we launched our program in July of 2023. And I'm going to go into some more of the details of the program itself. So as I mentioned, it covered multi-unit residential properties, also workplaces that were wanting to provide charging to their employees, community attractions. I'd say our incentives were, I think, pretty generous. We were covering make-ready incentives. So, panel upgrades that needed to happen, trenching, condo, all that sort of stuff was eligible for the grant. And then we had port incentives that were, again, I think, relatively high, covering both level 1 and level 2 equipment. We also had some additional funding allocation priorities. So the majority of the funding that was available for workplaces was intended for smaller employees. So we're trying to make this funding a little bit more accessible to smaller property owners, smaller workplaces, smaller multi-units. We were also trying to ensure that the funding didn't get snapped up very quickly by our largest city, our Chittenden County, which is where Burlington is located. And there was, we knew that there would be a lot of demand there. And while that's a valuable investment, we did want to try and make sure that this was available to all of the counties, because again, there are these places in other counties in Vermont, not just in Chittenden. And so we had a cap on how much any one county could receive. We also allocated funds based on the number of the customer base of each utility, just to make sure that, especially because our Green Mountain Power was administering the program, we wanted that to be sort of very transparent, that funds would be distributed based on utility customer base. We set our match amounts to be, again, I think pretty modest. The highest is a 10% match for for-profit businesses, and then the lowest, a 0% match for women, minority-owned businesses and properties. So the incentives were made available to folks on a rolling basis. It was a really, really low, the application was a really, really low bar. It was basically, tell us your name, your location, and do you think you know what you want for EV charging equipment, and submit it. And that kicked off a sort of one-on-one consultation to make sure that their project was eligible. and then provide any assistance that the applicant might need in terms of deciding what do we want for equipment, what would work at our property. We would connect them to an installer or contractor if that was something they needed some assistance with. The full application would then they would go out and get design estimate of their project. And that would be sort of considered the full application. Once they submitted that, we move into contracting. And I think the key thing that we did and we were able to do through this partnership with Green Mountain Power is provide that incentive upfront. So this was no longer a reimbursement program. And I do think that opened it up to more folks being willing to kind of take the risk and pursue an incentive and install EV charging. We held back a very small amount, maybe 5% of the total incentive, and that was issued once the final documentation, the proof of installation commissioning was all completed. Just a quick look at what our pipeline looked like and still looks like. More or less, this was an end of the year report. Actually, yeah, so this is outdated. We're in September. So this has shifted quite a bit. But at the end of last year, this is what our project pipeline looked like. Long story short is we are moving along pretty quickly to having all of the funds not obligated, but sort of is tagged to applications that are in the process of either being implemented or in the design estimate phase. So they're eligible and they're moving forward. We started off with some estimates for how much we thought we could accomplish with the funding based on the information we had from our pilot program, but we sort of have quickly realized that projects are pretty consistently coming in a little under what we would have expected them to go after in terms of incentives. And the number of ports that we are probably going to be able to install has also gone up quite a bit. So, averages are roughly 6,000 per port, which again includes all of the make ready. And we are also finding that most folks are going for somewhere between 2 and 6 ports, again, depending on the size of the property. Next steps for the program, just really quickly. So we are looking to now change the program from a funding cap, that 10% per county, to a funding floor. I think some of our more rural counties, it takes them a little bit longer to find the site hosts that may want to participate. There's a little bit more caution perhaps with the new technology. What about snow? What about just being in a rural place, some of the challenges. So we are wanting to put that funding floor in place just so that people know, like, this is available to you. Do your research, do your work, figure it out, but this is available to you. Come back and there will be funding available if you do want to do a program. So the additional funds that are required to do that are at the moment coming from a registration fee. The state of Vermont implemented a registration fee for both battery electric vehicles and plug-in electric vehicles to sort of, make up for the lost gas tax, et cetera. And so for now, those registration fees are being funneled into this program to then continue investing in the vehicle charging network. So that's it for me. Look forward to maybe answering some questions later.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn. And we will go right to Philip for our last presentation today.
Okay, hi everybody. Give me a second here. Can I get once I move into full screen mode here, can I get a thumbs up when this pops up that things are looking how they should be looking?
Yep, looks good.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So thanks for having me. I'm going to be talking about our program here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I think this is going to be most relevant for utilities, but I think maybe also advocates, regulators could find some of these concepts helpful. So 2 takeaways from my my presentation here. The first is how we can be dramatically increasing access to EV charging for multifamily. I'm sure everybody here is very well aware that that's one of the hardest, probably the hardest segment for EV charging, and there are opportunities here that I'll be talking about. And second is how our right-sized strategy is really enabling us to get some pretty significant results. So we are a utility. We're a locally led electricity provider for San Mateo County and Los Banos in Northern California. We're a public agency as well, so we generate clean power and then combine, partner with our investor-owned utility to provide it to customers. That's just a quick about who we are and about CCAs. And I want to frame what's happening here. I think a lot of people, again, are aware that this is so hard to do. But in California, even though we're very proud of all the chargers we've installed, we're still way off target from where we need to be in the next few years. So California has only installed 15% of the over 1 million chargers that we need by 2030. And so we're, even though we're putting a lot in, we're way, way off. So we need to be thinking about ways to scale up and do these faster, especially for people that live in multifamily. And locally here in San Mateo County, similar story. We've installed 5,000 chargers, but we need to install 70,000 chargers to get to an all-electric fleet as soon as possible. So I'm going to be making the case that multifamily is actually an opportunity because we can be doing things cheaper and quicker to kind of augment the public charging network, which is also very important, but I won't be talking about it today. Okay, so our EV Ready program is helping the community plan and pay for EV charging. We do that through free technical assistance that we provide to properties, financial incentives, contractor referrals if they need. We also encourage people to use their own contractors. And so we've helped the community install over 2,000 chargers in the last few years, 2/3 of which have been at multifamily, and we have another 4,000 in progress. This picture on the right is from a condo, an HOA here in the Bay Area, and this Saturday we're doing ribbon cutting for these chargers. We helped to install 143 chargers at this condo. We're pretty sure that's the biggest in the state for a retrofit project, among the biggest in the country. It's one for every single parking space, and they did it with no out-of-pocket cost because of our incentives. So really, really important. We're really excited about it, and we're doing a ribbon cutting this Saturday. And so, quick snapshot of our incentives, you'll see that we highly emphasize outlets, smart outlets. So bring your own charger type, and I'll get into what that means in a second. And we do that by providing an incentive that covers most of the cost to get these installed. Smart outlets are much more affordable, but it still costs a little bit of money to put these things in. And we don't have a cap. So if someone's going to put in 100 of these things, they're eligible for a $200,000 incentive from us. Level 2 charging, we consider kind of a great, but also a more premium solution. And in which case, we ask customers to help pay for that a little bit if they want to elect to put those in. So key strategies. Technical assistance is as important as incentives, and then right-sizing equipment is key to getting scale. So technical assistance, what we're doing here is we're giving property owners education about EV charging without overwhelming them, an electrical capacity assessment of their site. Site designs of 3 options. So we give them exactly what they asked for up front, a upsell to put in more, and then a kind of swing for the fences type, how much can we put in maximally in your project. And the really important thing that I keep stressing, the number one metric that I find so key to represent how important technical assistance is multifamily properties on average triple the amount of EV charging that they put in after receiving our technical assistance. So they come in thinking, I don't know, I'm on the board of my condo. People are asking for charging. Let's do it. Let's put in 2 level 2 chargers. Like, I don't know, they're just sort of guessing because they don't really know how to start. And that's maybe what they would have done if they had not met with us. And we instead say, okay, we'll show you what those 2 chargers will look like in terms of cost, operations, etc. But we're also going to recommend that you put in something like, I don't know, 12 to 16 level 1 outlets in assigned parking instead. And they see how much more cost effective that is versus what they were thinking and are often going to those solutions. So that is why technical assistance is so important because people don't know really what they're doing. People who run apartments or condos are not in the business of installing EV charging. And so it's very, very helpful to reorient them to more cost-effective solutions. This is what they get in our technical assistance. These are examples. We do layouts, we do cost estimates. And again, we're trying to orient people to the most cost-effective projects possible. And we do that through right sizing. So we define right sizing as identifying what the customer needs are, using what's available first, and then upsizing only when necessary. And so that requires us to talk a little bit about EV charging. I think, when we're talking about this first thing, identifying customer needs, for residential charging here in the Bay Area, that's about 30 miles a day. So we're orienting our charging to that, what people need daily, knowing that they're going to get charging in their assigned parking space, not for an extraordinary need. Like, oh, I just drove to visit, my in-laws down in LA, and I just got back, and now I'm going to go drive to, I don't know, Washington to go skiing or something the next day. Like, I did 300 miles driving in one day, I'm going to do 300 miles driving the next day. That happens like once every 10 years to people. So we're not designing our EV charging to meet those needs. We're designing them to meet daily needs. Okay, so getting back to EV charging. So those daily needs, about 30 miles a day on average. Let's imagine that energy need is represented by like a pool. I guess we're still in summer here. So we want to say we want to fill like a kiddie pool or like a pool for your dog or something like that in the backyard. There's different ways to do this. And one way is through like a normal faucet. That would be like level 1 charging. Slow, but you can just run the hose out there and come back and check on it in a couple hours. You don't need to be sitting there, watching it. Low power level 2 would be like a garden hose, faster, but maybe more expensive. Level 2 would be like a fire hose. Okay, that's a lot. We're getting a lot of water here really quickly, but you'll definitely have to redo your plumbing to make that happen. So maybe that's a priority. And fast charging would be like a waterfall, if you like really need to fill this pool in a second, but like not realistic for what we're talking about here. So the main point is that EV charging comes in different speeds, and they're not better than the other. They're the right tool for the right job, and that's what we're focusing on. Okay, so right sizing for us, for residential, multifamily residential, means a lot of level 1 and some load managed level 2 charging. So we did an analysis. Level 1 meets the needs of something like 96% of drivers, already in use by 1/3 of drivers in single family homes, and costs about $2,500 per port. So it's like 3 to 5 times less than level 2 installs in other programs. That is the key, because cost is the most important thing that apartment property managers are thinking of. How little can I pay to do this? And so if we can show them that they can go big while at low cost, great. Here's an example. We had a 90 unit HOA here in East Palo Alto. They came to us saying, let's just do 2 because, that's a very common request. Let's do 2 insured parking. And we showed them what 92 in assigned parking would look like. And that's what they went for. And it was under $500 per space net cost. I don't think we're ever going to get an upsell that good again, but that is an example of what you can do when focusing on more cost-effective stuff. And so, like I said, we're kind of moving people into this one outlet per space type of EV charging for multifamily. And here's a few of the providers that we typically recommend. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. And thanks to all our panelists. So we're going to move into our Q&A section. So we have a question for Bronwyn about Charge Vermont. It's from Harold. And Harold asks, how will you make sure chargers are kept in working order?
Thanks, Harold. So right now, when folks receive an incentive, they sign a contract with Green Mountain Power, and that contract requires that they keep the equipment in good working order for 5 years after installation. Certainly enforcement of that and enforcement of that is a challenge. And not because we can't track them. One of the nice things about Vermont being so small is everybody knows everybody. And I would have laughed at that, having come from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where that is not the case. But, we have good relationships, good contacts. I think the more challenging thing is when something goes wrong, if there is an issue, again, these are people who are, especially multi-unit, they are landlords, right? And so they have purchased some equipment, and oftentimes what's going wrong is something with the equipment. And so that whole sort of rigmarole of getting in touch with your equipment provider, your network provider, figuring out what the challenge is. Sometimes it's, something like connectivity. And so sort of what is the recourse if a piece of equipment is not working? To Philip's point, it's more technical assistance, helping them get that piece of equipment back up and running. I would say far majority of the property owners, if there's something going wrong, it's not that they don't care and don't care to fix it. It's more about having the resources to figure out what needs to happen to fix it. So yes, we have that in our contracts. We can hold people to that if we discover that equipment is not being kept up and maintained. But usually if there's something going wrong, it's because there's a technical issue that they need some support with. So we try and focus on that. Back to the weights and measures piece as well. So if anybody has their weights and measures division, will often go around and check on especially public facing equipment to make sure that it's meeting all of the regulatory standards for method of sale and accuracy of the amount being sold. So, if you're interested in trying to figure out how do we keep tabs on equipment, your weights and measures folks might be have some assistance to provide there as well.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And we have a question for Philip. So Peggy asks, for the California projects, you mentioned providing smart plugs, so no actual charging units are necessary.
Yep. Oh, yes, that is true. That is right. So these are bring your own outlet, or sorry, bring your own charger situation. So in California, it's the law that all EVs need to be sold with a portable cord set. So everybody already has one in their car, a level 1 cord set. And then starting now, essentially for model year 26, the regulations are that they have to be dual level 1, level 2. I'm not at my desk right now, but otherwise I would be able to pull one up. But it's like it's a mobile cord set that has both level 1 and level 2 options. You just kind of pull one out, put the other one in. So all EVs already have this, which is great. And so for the property managers, they're just putting in smart outlets that do billing, access control, etc. Tenants bring their own charger, and if they move, they bring that charger with them and go to the next place. So it's a good solution, and it's low maintenance for the property owners too.
Thanks, Philip. Since we've pretty much answered all the questions here, just as kind of a closing question, or while we wait for some more, maybe if I could hear from each of you on some kind of element that you'd like to see in the future for your own work to kind of make your jobs easier, make charging access better for the people that you work with. Just anything that you'd like to see in the future.
I can start. One thing that we're working on, Jess, I think you had mentioned the cost to drivers being like a really important factor for us too. It's we want to reduce cost to the properties so we can do more, and then cost to the drivers so that they are properly incentivized to save money with EV charging. So a big thing that we're thinking about and paying for through a grant is submetering. So we want these smart outlets to eventually act as submeters. So instead of just a price that's set by the property, drivers can actually just charge on their own energy bill, like as if they were literally plugging in inside their apartment, even though their car's at a garage, not in their apartment. So that's going to be a really huge advantage and has major equity implications, and we're working on that now.
Thanks. Maybe you can just hear from Jennifer since you haven't answered her question yet.
Sure. Yeah, I think I would like to kind of work towards more education for both communities and kind of the property managers on charging, and like we do that to some extent for folks that are using the program. Like if they need to book a vehicle, they need to learn about the EV and charging, but I think it can still be kind of unfamiliar sometimes for other folks that are living there. And like although we're placing charging stations there, and we're making it available to the community, I think it's not always easy for people to kind of find those chargers and to use them. And I think some of that is is just like it is going to be a resource. Like the property is still going to have it even if the car share program ends, and maybe that's going to make it easier for future adoption. But yeah, I think just like kind of bridging some of that gap, and yeah, getting some more utilization for the program as well as the chargers by the communities.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. And we have one more question. I know we're over time, so for anyone who has to jump, thank you so much for attending the webinar today. I hope you found it useful, and we'll maybe look into some of the great projects that we featured today. And hopefully can check out our other resources and the Fourth Roadmap Conference and everything that our panelists have mentioned. And just if we have time, maybe one of the panelists could address a question we got about, do you hear about liability concerns from properties, and how do you address those concerns?
I'll start. Simple answer for me is no, we haven't heard too much about liability related to EVSE, but perhaps due to the fact that this is an incentive program, it is, we're not talking regulatory stuff. So most of the property owners that are coming to us are eager and wanting to do this, wanting to provide this as an amenity. I will say that I think I'm a renter myself, I will say. So I have come to it with that perspective, but of all of the things that a property owner has going on in terms of sort of safety issues at their property, this is just sort of like, I mean, it's the EV, it's in terms of electric, I know there's concerns out there about fire, which I think, not to say they shouldn't be addressed, but I do sometimes think they kind of spiral a little bit. But of all of the liability issues at a property, an electric vehicle charger is pretty small. It's basically like, electricity wise, it's a hot water heater, right? It's I think we're not hearing it come up specific to EVSE as much.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, we will conclude our webinar. Thank you so much to our panelists, to our support behind the scenes, and to everyone for coming today. And be sure to check out our resources, and have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you so much.